Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board Podcast. I've got a special guest with me here today, a guy full of surprises. So, Devin Johnson, founder CEO of Kennected with a K. A lot of you guys have probably heard about it or used it or thought about using it. It's a pretty powerful platform that helps automate engagement on tools like LinkedIn, social platforms like LinkedIn. But Devin comes to us. There's a lot more to him than just founding one of the fastest growing companies in America. 20 Inc. 500. You guys were ranked number 438. Is that right? Out of the 5,000 fastest growing companies. So crazy success. 20,000 people on the platform. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Devin, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit more about you and specifically, like, I wanted you to share a little bit about your background before we jump into the topic today.
Yeah, no, first and foremost, appreciate you having me on the show and spending some time with you. So it all started, really, entrepreneurship started when I was growing up and getting right into kind of my backstory. So grew up into a divided household, mom and dad never married. And my dad was locked up in a state penitentiary for 10 years of my life. However, my mom would take me to see him at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, especially around the holiday season. So I always had a relationship with my father. When he got out of prison, was released, going back and forth, every other weekend type of situation as if they were divorced or whatnot. But anyhow, when I was 12, I stumbled into my dad's laundry room, pulled a laundry basket, a couple pounds of weed fell out. And he had to set me down and tell me what he did for work. And he described it as a professional street pharmacist. So, at a relatively young age, realized my dad was a drug dealer. My mom was a factory worker, two hardworking individuals, two totally different sides of the spectrum. And there was one common ground there, that is that they wanted me to stay in school and beat the system and, be a better version than themselves, right? That's what kind of held this together. Was neither one of them wanted me to look up into either vertical, what they knew or how they were raised, but they wanted the best for me. And so, growing up was extremely unique, obviously, with seeing two different worlds. Like every other weekend was different. I'd go, my mom was just a hardworking, couple jobs to keep a roof over our head, to keep us in a good school district. And I'd go to my dad's and it was ball till you fall, and mall shopping sprees randomly where you'd spend 5-10 grand, and it was so wild growing up, two different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I knew quickly that I wanted to make a lot of money and I wanted to help a lot of people and I wanted to do it legally. I knew that at a young age. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I liked my dad's lifestyle, but frowned upon and disliked his path of success. And I watched my mom work way too hard for way too little, right? And so, I knew what I wanted young, and that the opportunity to start to pursue that popped up when I was 15. So my sister was diagnosed with a rare form of brain cancer called medulloblastoma. Attacks your adrenaline gland and your fight or flight senses of the body. And so when that happened, my dad also admitted at the time he was struggling with an opioid addiction, particularly heroin, and went off onto a kind of a 1-year bender. I don't know what happened in that year, but really wasn't around to support my mom and the most stressful, crazy situation she's ever been put into. And then also my mom's career, I believe it was 12 or 14 years at the time, I forget exactly, immediately let her go due to the situation with my sister, her obviously not being able to return to work and fulfill her duties. And so it left my mom in a really weird situation with my dad out, her, now unemployed. And so I started reselling sneakers to help the situation with my sister, and also, cut my teeth on entrepreneurship, right? And so I knew my sneakers had value for my dad. It's always what he bought me. It was every birthday, every Christmas. It was he himself had a couple hundred pairs. Like I knew shoes had value, so I just started by selling the ones I had, and then I got into learning how releases worked and lining up at the shoe stores and getting the really rare pairs and all of that. And so that led me into 16. I started on a moped. 16, I got my license, and then I started doing little trade shows, right? And eventually graduated high school, where the digital marketing. I switched to digital marketing due to a crowded marketplace for shoes, because an app came out called StockX. But it's kind of my childhood and background in a nutshell. But it was fight or flight for most precious time of growing up. That 15 to 18. I'm actually really thankful for it looking back, because it became a man fast. It became able to stand on my 2 feet, pretty quickly. And my dad did end up passing away from an overdose when I was 21, so a little bit later after graduating high school. But he fought his battle. My sister beat cancer. She's still with us today. She just turned 22. My mom's and I's relationship's probably the best it's ever been. Post a couple years of trying to mend that relationship. So yeah, everything's on a trajectory upward.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough background. And one of the reasons why, Devin, we were going to talk about something totally different, but we pivoted after I'd spent some time looking through your bio, and I'm sharing this with you guys because what we want to talk about today is mindset a little bit. That's something that came out loud and clear as I was getting to know Devin before this episode. That you rarely meet people with that type of background and that have had the type of success he has. But the mindset management is actually, I think, the key. And maybe correct me if you feel like I'm wrong here. I mean, obviously, God's been very good, right? That's the true source. But something that has motivated you and driven you through the challenges you've had has really been learning how to manage your mindset. And so, if you don't mind, that's kind of what I wanted to shift our focus around today and talk about: how do you create a mindset of abundance, create a mindset that enables you to work through hard things. This economy that we're in right now is not going to get better right now. It's going to be rough for a little while. Going into an election year, things are always tumultuous during election years. So there are a lot of people that have a lot on the line in businesses that they own, franchise systems that they're trying to get off the ground, and they've got franchise owners, franchisees that are struggling to make things work. Franchise consultants, it's getting more competitive, right? So a lot of the people that are mutual clients of both of us need some help in this area, I think. So Devin, how would you launch into describing how you changed your mindset, how you developed a mindset? Your history is, I think, a big part of it, but share a little bit of that with us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, when you're faced with the adversity like I was at such a young age, I mean, it's not like I had years of being in the economic landscape and making money and working. It was like I was not expecting that. Typically when you're 15, 16, you're hanging out with your buddies, probably doing something you shouldn't be doing, like getting your first speeding ticket, that type of stuff. And I was figuring out how to like make money to help a family situation, right? And so, I immediately latched on to one, I know this isn't a forever thing. Two, I can outwork the negativity here by getting small wins and stacking up those small wins. And three, knowing that this is all leads to the bigger picture, right? And I think a lot of us we get caught up in the now too much, and you need to live in the now, the present. Like, I'm not some loony dude that just always lives in the future, but
Yeah.
some of your decisions and some of the things you're experiencing currently will not matter in 5 years, or let alone a lot of situations and decisions won't matter in a year, right? And we get so caught up on what we're facing and what our past was. So, for instance, my situation, I could, be struggling through life right now and saying, well, my dad was a drug addict, my sister, blah, 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 right? The victim mindset, and saying, well, all these things worked against me, so therefore I'm doing nothing about it. That's when someone tells me, well, I'm doing this because of this. That's how my mind's like, oh, okay, cool. You want to be stuck in the past. Like, awesome. Like, the past already happened. We need to move forward, control the controllables, and not hold on to the the moments that were crappy and or possibly very challenging, right? They happen, move on.
Mhm.
And it's something
Yeah.
that I just was gifted with. I don't necessarily know how to coach you through quote unquote moving beyond the past. I can teach you how to build confidence, which then helps you move on through the past, because once you build confidence, it creates ego, and ego creates helps typically create momentum.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you got to leave the past in the past.
That's I would say it's a very difficult thing for people, right? That's hard
It
for
is.
individuals to say, hey, I had a hard childhood. Hey, I maybe people that grew up with abuse or really rough stuff, right? Like you had rough stuff, but there are people that grew up in really rough situations that I know that have had a really hard time moving beyond. You mentioned it, but a victim mindset. And guys, trust me, like I'm not trying to minimize anything here by saying that, but this is just a psychological term a lot of people use to describe someone who clings to the past as a way to define their present and even their future
Mhm.
sometimes. Is that a fair way to you think to phrase that, Devin?
Yeah, and guys, there's people that went through something 10 times worse than I did, and I don't want to downplay anybody's situation.
No.
However, how do you expect to move forward in life if you're constantly stuck in something that was 5, 10, 2 years ago, a year ago? It great white shark dies when it swims backwards, or supposedly, right? Who knows? But that's what they say out there on the good old internet. It's you got to move forward with things.
Mhm. Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that because you're right. Like, and we're not therapists here. Like, we're not trying to like help you figure out how to move through emotional trauma in the past. That's not really the point of this. And frankly, neither of us is qualified, I think, to coach through that too much. But let's talk about you're in a situation now, right? Like any one of us in this moment right now, we have the power within us to decide how we want to. And you mention it. There are usually the people. There are more, right? But there are three big things each of us can control. Do you want to share a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
that, Devin? Like how you perceive that and how you've been able to use your focus on the things you can control to work through tough situations and shed things that aren't that important and just keep moving forward with momentum.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you can control how you react,
Mhm.
right? Good or bad situation pops up, you can always control the ability how you emotionally react, right? And
Mhm.
second and foremost, you can always control your action upon the reaction and or situation. So the fact that you act positively and or negatively, you can control how you move forward with the situation. And third, most importantly, is there's something no one can ever take away from you, which is your mind, your skill set. You have the ability to create some sort of plan to move forward. You just have to be willing to say we are going to move forward and not just accept.
Mhm.
And so all three human, or all three of those, every human, no matter if you're poor, broke, rich, doesn't matter. You have the ability to control all three of those elements with
Mhm.
any situation that arises.
Yeah.
You know, and what I like to do is, let's say let's use real world scenarios.
Mhm.
Really tough business decision comes up of fire a couple employees, or possibly risk going out of business. Like, this is a real situation, right? A lot of people are facing this right now.
Yeah.
Like, you care about those other people and you're emotionally connected to those other people. But think about moving forward. You started the business for you and your family and your end goal. So if that is required because of previous decisions leading up to you not now being able to afford them, you need to cut and move forward and reassess and write down lessons of why did it get to a situation where I had to do that? So then you can move forward into building that team again. It's something, actually pick that scenario because that's something I've actually had to live, and something that I actually really struggled to make a decision on. And you know, you can blame it on this, that, or the third, but your success in business and personal life, you control the destiny of that. And that sounds super cliche, but you really do.
Yeah.
And and especially in business, a lot of leaders right now blame the market and blame capital and blame this and blame that. It's like, no, dude, you decided to hire the 100 employees in 2020.
Mhm.
you,
Yeah.
you know, and they can't look in the mirror, and that's something I struggled with too. When I had to do a little bit of right sizing in my business and making sure we're here for the long run and making sure we're the right people in the right seats.
Mhm.
Um, over 50 people over a course of a time, but over 50 people swapping out and making sure we're doing the right thing. I'm like, how the heck did we get here? Oh yeah, I listened to this consultant and agreed that it was a really good idea. So we marched forward, but I listened to that consultant. So I didn't filter out, that I probably shouldn't be spending that much money,
Mhm.
So therefore it's my fault. It's not the consultant's fault, my fault.
Mhm.
I didn't run it back through the filter of reality.
Yeah. I love what you're saying. I want to recap a couple of key things here, guys, that I hear Devin saying, and this is just it's such it's really emotional intelligence that we're talking about in some regards here, but it's a missing superpower. Like a lot of people don't realize that anyone can do this. Anyone can do this. It doesn't matter where you've been or who you are, but there are three things we can control, and there's also one key decision you have to make whenever something goes wrong. And I want to share that with you because you just said it, but I want to highlight it. You can control your mindset, you can control your actions, you can control your reactions, right? Meaning, I almost invert those because you react before you act. Oftentimes when crappy stuff happens, right? Like I get to choose. I love what Tony Robbins says. Like, hey, you can be mad. Like, get mad. Let yourself be mad
Mm-hmm.
for 90 seconds. Like, that's okay. 2 minutes. Like, give yourself a limit. Be mad about it, and then get that crap out of your head, and then go to work, right? And I think there are a lot of times in our lives where we have to do that. I coach baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball is like a micro life, like for 7 to 9 innings every game, right? And so, but you're going to get at bat, and you're going to get tricked on a curveball, and you're going to strike out. Guess what? You can be mad, but by the time you get back to the dugout, you shed that crap and you go get on the field and you go play baseball, right? And then the next time you get up to bat, that's the nice part about life. The only thing that's terminal is if we quit, right? If we quit trying.
Yeah.
It's the only
Mm-hmm.
thing that's terminal. Nothing else can stop us. My dad went through. He had a great business growing up. He had a really bad accountant that made some stupid decisions. Ended up putting him upside down with the IRS. He had to declare bankruptcy. Like not a great experience for him, right? He was living. He was doing great, like on the path in the '90s to be a multimillionaire. And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, everything came to a screeching halt. Took a little while to rebuild, but he had a beautiful life as he was rebuilding
Mm-hmm.
everything. Ended up getting a PhD, turning around online education institutions, like changed the direction of his life in a meaningful way. And there were so many times I've talked to him about that, like how do you manage that? And the reality is you have to you have to decide. And I'm really proud of him for this. Like he didn't say my dang accountant, my darn accountant. He's like, look, I was in charge. You have to own it. This is where I'm going with this. It's like you just said it a minute ago. When things go wrong, you have to just own it. Don't look for excuses. Everyone wants to blame COVID or politics or dumb stuff or
Yeah.
interest rates. Those are factors that are impacting our business, but we all know it. But the real person is in the mirror who made the decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to accept, hey, I screwed up. I screwed up.
Yeah.
And then you have to do what you said, which is debrief on that. Okay, so I screwed up and I learned it's an expensive lesson. How am I going to make sure I never repeat this again? If you're doing that, you're living the secret of success, which is iteration, right? The faster you learn and iterate, the faster you're going to develop and grow. So I'm talking too much. So let me turn it back over to you, Devin. Like how?
No, you're good.
Yeah. So tell me, well, how else? How do you manage this process? Because iterating, learning, accepting the blame for the issue. That's something that is vacant in leadership that I see generally speaking across the board, politics and even business ownership. How do you see that? Like, how can you coach people into learning that it's okay to accept blame for a mistake when they're in charge?
Yeah, funny enough, you mentioned own it. So our core values at Kennected are own it. It's an acronym of opportunity, world class, no BS, impact, and together. Own it. It's on our wall as soon as you walk in. Own it. It's our core
Wow,
values, right?
awesome.
And it, you know, I built the company from building block number one with the original founding team of we're going to make massive impact, but we're not going to sit here and tell each other everything we want to hear. We're going to call each other out on our BS. We're all full of it somewhere at some time, right?
Yeah.
And I have my closest business partner. His name's Cody. That he is a very direct source of, you need to look in the mirror right now. You need to look in the mirror. You need to look in the mirror. You need to look in the mirror. You mentioned that we grew a lot, and we did. For a tech company, we went from a million ARR, 7 million ARR a year and a half, like crazy growth, right?
Yeah.
But I got a little drunk on that. It's okay to burn a little money, and then before you know it, we're burning $600,000 a month in growth, and it's just not sustainable, right? For forever. And so, you have my business partner calls me out on it. I get mad, and it's about the people, and it's about the culture, and blah 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 blah. Before you know it, I look in the mirror. I'm like, dude, stop being a freaking, stubborn. This is not sustainable. It's not a sustainable model.
Yeah.
And so then you need to do some course correction, and you spit out a final product of a really scalable business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I surround myself by people, and I recommend that my executive team tell me stuff that I don't want to hear. I don't have all the answers, and there's a concept I use. It's we versus I. I
Mm-hmm.
used to, early on as a leader, I always be like, I got this, I got this, I got this. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Right? It's like I can't be good at everything. I can't run and master every spectrum. Yet I've got this team around me, and every time a big problem comes up, I'm like, I'll figure it out. Versus, I really started focusing on the we, leaning into the EOS structure. We run the business on entrepreneur operating system.
Yeah.
Different tangent, but long story short, good system to follow to scale a business.
Mm-hmm.
And leaning into those meetings, like, all right, guys, hey, we have this problem. How do we fix it?
Mm-hmm.
And having other people call out my weaknesses, especially my business partner, such as a Cody, um, and encouraging it. I would say that's one that we can all control. Encourage people around you to call you out on your BS. Surround yourself by someone that they may not be ahead of you in life, and or maybe they're 10 times ahead of you in life, but they'll call you out on just being stupid, on just dumb decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Put some accountability somewhere in your entrepreneurial journey, and encourage transparency throughout the executive team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. That's hard to build, especially where a lot of executive teams, especially when they mesh well together, it's hard for them to be honest with each other because they don't want to hurt each other's feelings. Or young executive teams that are being brought into a new concept. It's something that I've never had a hard time with, and I've had a few executives who've had a really hard time hearing the truth, and hearing that, hey, this isn't a great idea. So
Mhm.
it can be risky and it's uncomfortable. And the honest truth is, I don't feel like I'm being honest with myself or doing the best thing for the company or for my people, my teams, if I'm not being honest. And though sometimes honesty comes across like a slap in the face to people who are driving their lives through ego rather than through like what's best for a company. So
Mhm.
how did you make that change? It sounds like you had a couple of gut checks that led you down that path where you like really started to foster this transparency and this openness. But sounds like you found yourself burning way too much capital too fast. What else? There's got to be more to it than that, though, that led you to realize we got to change this culture and foster something different.
Yeah, I mean, you really, from going from a founder to CEO, I think it's one massive difference is you start making data driven decision versus gut decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the beginning transformation of founding a company and really making economic decisions. And so getting in, and EOS teaches good business metrics. It's all about, KPIs and, quarterly focuses and whatnot. And just observing the data of X metrics, and realizing that it's not moving the needle, right? And we in order to sell this thing, we're gonna have to get this sustainable and keep growing and yada yada yada. So really leaning into good business infrastructure to have clear data on each moving piece of the business, and not shying away from it, because we can all do tricky accounting and say, hey, yeah, we're profitable, but actually losing money. You can do tricky accounting, you can do tricky tracking on KPIs and tell yourself dirty little lies, but like looking at the KPIs for what they actually are, good, bad, or ugly, on a week-to-week basis, and making those changes to progressively move the business forward.
I love that. So in your executive meetings, are you guys following kind of an L10 structure? Like, how do you guys manage through that executive meeting to get to the point where you're identifying, hey, these are good, bad, and ugly, and then we're dropping those down into issues lists and then tackling them together? How do you guys kind of manage the flow in a meeting like that?
We run a true L10 structure from the EOS framework, and then we will hold a Friday same page as well. And then I do have a finance only meeting that is around, if a KPI comes in glaring, I go in and dive into what knobs need twisted or need fixed. We just, like this week, we just had a crappy week of inbound leads, and to money spent to cash collection, and spent 17,000, brought in 5,000, like massive problem, right? So breaking that down of what broke where, and if we don't have the answers, what systems are we not following, what's broken, right? So L10 from a high level, all key executives in that one, and then I have a one-on-one finance, particularly around just money problems, concerns, or opportunities.
Yeah, love that. And if you're not familiar, guys, with EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, you should check it out. Client Tether runs on that as well, so we're familiar with that structure. We still question, like, our L10 meetings have a little bit of impurity in them still, so we're working on burning that out. But some bad habits still linger. But it's an effective way to run a meeting, and make sure you're covering the key metrics, highlighting areas of issue that need to be addressed by the team, dropping down issues, and then focusing as much of the meeting as possible on resolving issues as a team. That's pretty powerful.
I think it's one of the things, anybody listening to this that's starting to get a little bit of momentum in their business, 500-600K a year, maybe $1 million a year, really need to start looking at business operating systems such as EOS. There's other solutions. EOS is not your only solution,
right?
But you need to be looking at, like, is your team being in meetings to death? Like, are they in meetings 40 out of 60 hours of the week? There's no way that you're being that productive when your team's in meetings for 40, 45 hours a week.
Yeah, there's no way.
You have inefficiencies, right? And you have no way to do it if you don't have technology or a system or framework to even be able to point out those type of issues.
Yeah, a scorecard, right? You got to have a scorecard. You got to know, you should be able to see at a glance where the issues are in the business through numbers. And then it's hard to get there. Like, it was a transition for us as we started working through that. But what I found is, once the numbers started doing the talking, the emotions didn't do as much of talking anymore. Like, we could see this isn't working, and we could focus on what wasn't working. And we're still working on plenty of stuff. I'm sure you are too. There are lots of ugly warts. You cut off a couple ugly warts and find the new ones that just grew. Like, it's just part of running a business. But no one's got a pretty baby in business, really, until maybe 10, 15 years in, when they've polished it a lot. But there are lots of warts, especially when you grow as fast as you guys have. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's shift back. So we went on a little bit of a tangent there, but we've been talking about, developing, maintaining mindset. There are things that will come up that will rock your world, Devin, right? Big challenges. How have you found, because you mentioned before, like, confidence leads to ego, and ego leads to, I just forgot what you said. There was a third stage there. Momentum.
Momentum.
Yeah. So how do you find, like, when your ego gets checked, right? Like, boom, something blows up, and it was totally your fault. You screwed it up. How do you eat that and then move forward? Because that can really wreck somebody's ego. It can really wreck somebody's confidence to continue making decisions and taking risks. How do you encourage somebody to move through that?
Yeah, so I think it starts fundamentally with understanding the confidence and the ego elements, right? So confidence is keeping small promises to yourself over time. You will build confidence. Doing it over in repetitive tasks will get you confident and creating ego around feeling very comfortable around something.
Mm-hmm.
However, big fan of the ego is the enemy type book, and don't believe you need to walk in the room and act like you know everything. And that is not my MO. It's not how I am.
Yeah.
But ego is a tool to drive clarity, vision, and momentum. Like if I walked in as CEO tomorrow, and like, I don't know how we're going to grow this thing. I'm not really sure. I don't know what the plan's going to be, team. They'd be like, well, shit, I'm going to go find a new job. Like there's no confidence. There's no path forward. Right? There's no momentum. But you got to put a little bit of ego in there. And it's me doing reps of learning from this book or this mentor and seeing it work in our marketing plan. And it's longevity of small promises to myself to run a sustainable, profitable, great enterprise. Right. So I've kept that promise. I've worked towards that promise so I can walk in, be confident about something. Now, to your question, something boom blows up in front of your face. Again, remember, you can control how you react and or process challenges, right? So if something totally derailing to attack the business, you still have people, processes, automations, and other things. A lot of people think that, oh man, my business can't sell what it sells now. They forget, like, they have the hardest thing. They have people, they have a CRM, they have basic stuff for a good business.
Mm-hmm.
Come up with another, get to the whiteboard, come up with another great offer, start selling again. Like, and use the infrastructure you've already put millions of dollars into in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all about how do you react and how do you decide to move forward. You can sit there and dwell on it, like, oh, I've got my nuts kicked in on this. Yeah, we all do. We all have those moments. This year, best and hardest year of business I've ever had. It's super weird, super
Mm-hmm.
weird. Like best and hardest. And so, but I've had a lot of challenges this year where it's like I think a lot of people faced with what I have had to deal with this year probably would have threw the towel in. I'd say 95%. But I've decided that we've got what it takes, and I'm going to want to mend it all together and stay on top of it and push through. So I'm not just speaking from theoreticals, right? And I'm also 26, running a 55-person company in an economic downturn. I've never seen an economic downturn,
Yeah.
right? I've only lived in the rainbows and unicorns of low interest rates and you can go get money anywhere, right?
Right.
So I'm having to control my emotions towards outside marketplace factors as well,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to do that sustainably. So
Yeah, that's well, and I appreciate you're willing to share that. If we had another half an hour, I'd love to dive in deeper because clientele, they're like openly, we've had plenty of challenges, right? When I came here 5 years ago, the company was quite small, but had really good tech, but had never sold or marketed, really. Like it was really a fascinating situation. So we've had all sorts of growing pains as we've grown quite rapidly in the last several years. And but there we have personnel challenges like everybody else. We have anyway, all the dimensions like funding and personnel and technology and all these different things that will hit you. Then there's the outside market issues of, well, I need capital. Well, capital was cheap and easy a year ago. It's not today. Like there are all these things, right, that you can't control. But I do love the way our founder, when we were looking, okay, what do we want to do strategically? He's like, look, let's build a model where we can become independent of any sort of external capital ever again. And let's make a couple of sacrifices now and squeeze a little now so that we can then be in a position where we're running cash, cash positive and then we write our checks.
that is almost exactly what I've done this year.
Okay. That's
Like
hard. Hard.
it is very hard. But at the end of the day, I looked in the mirror and said, hey, I'm doing this for finishing the job, what I promised to investors, myself, my family. my key executives, people that have equity in this business,
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice for now to turn around and make it epic.
Mm-hmm.
So because the model that worked in 2020 for tech in 2021 does not work now.
Mm-mm.
The you can burn as much money as long as you're growing, dude. That that doesn't exist.
Gone. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. It's wild. Well, funny. I don't know. Maybe that's why I was inspired to share that thought. But that's a good lunchtime conversation for us too, because that's a tough journey. But again, we come back to the three core things. Like, what can you control? Right? You can control your mindset about it. Like, hey, you can get mad. Like, this sucks. I can't do it the same way I used to do it, and then get over it, because you can control how you react to it, and then you get to control what your actions are afterward. And that's a process I think more people need to understand. And it seems super simple, right? Super simple, and yet it's really hard, especially to control your reactions. I still struggle with that sometimes. Right? My first reaction is gonna be like, "Are you freaking serious?" Like, I want to just like light somebody up, and yet the reality is like, there's no need for that. That's an ego driven decision, and ego's got a place in this economy of personal growth and running business, but it can't be the driver. That's the driving force you
No.
got to challenge, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Devin, tell us. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've got just a couple of minutes here. A couple of parting thoughts for people who are, let's say, struggling right now. They need a little bit of motivation, someone to pick them up. What would you share with somebody who's listening that's really trying to figure things out and is going through a hard time?
I read this recently in a book and I loved it. So I'm gonna start with it and then I'll go to my own thoughts.
Please.
Um, so I was reading a book and it said, no matter what you're going through, you'll be in your bed tonight. Like, just remember that. Like, however tough your day is, you get to crawl into your bed tonight, restart, and hit it again fresh tomorrow, right? So, if you're really, being challenged right now, whether that be your business model or economic situation, I've shared a little bit about what we went through this year, which was very challenging with all fronts. You have to stick to your core competencies. Like, for me, I know I'm good at sales and the ability to drive revenue. So I went back to making sure we went to sales focused cash collection, model, right? And so a lot of people get into a situation where their back's against the wall. They're like, I don't know what to do. Like, you have a secret sauce and or secret ability that makes you special because you are a human. Lean into it and charge for it and take it back to the marketplace and come back out with revengeance. And eventually you'll build that bankroll back up. You'll build that confidence back up. You'll rebuild the team. You'll rebuild the company and you'll get back out there. But like, whatever your secret sauce is, whatever you say, everyone wakes up. I very rarely ever met someone like, what are you good at? And they're like, man, nothing. Yeah, I'm worthless.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I've ever heard. I don't think I've ever heard someone saying, "Ah, worthless." Like, what are you the best at? And a lot of times that I'm guilty of it. You start growing a business and you think that, I'm not taking a sales call. I don't need to take a sales call. Like, no, dude, your business needs revenue. Take the sales call, right? Or
Yeah.
or you were the guy that put the first million on the scoreboard. Like, go rebuild the lead gen system that you had back in the day. Like, get back to your core competency and start charging money for it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think we could go on and on here. There's a lot more to share, but I appreciate what you shared with us today, Devin, sharing your story a little bit, your background, and then some of the things that have helped you be successful as you've grown a great company. Guys, if you're doing any sort of prospecting on LinkedIn, and if you haven't met these guys at Kennected yet, Ken, double N, right?
Yeah.
Kennected, Kennected. Check them out.
Yep.
It's a really powerful platform, but powerful guy behind the helm, which explains why the company's been able to change a lot of lives through the tools you provide. So thanks a lot, Devin. Sure
No,
appreciate
appreciate it, Dave.
you. Yeah. Talk to you later.
All right. See you, buddy.